Picture two distinct apartments located in the same city, within the same neighborhood, sharing similar rent prices. The first unit belongs to an individual earning $98,000 annually. Step inside, and you're immediately greeted by a massive 75-inch television mounted prominently on the wall, accompanied by a luxurious leather sectional that cost $4,200. The kitchen is stocked with high-end appliances, many still sitting unopened in their original packaging. Closets are bursting with clothing, numerous items bearing tags that have never been removed, while a spare bedroom has been converted into a storage facility for possessions untouched for years. Despite this apparent abundance, this person checks their bank balance with a pit in their stomach, knowing they are just two missed paychecks away from a major financial crisis. The second apartment belongs to someone earning $54,000 per year. Walk in, and you'll notice an immediate sense of space, furnished with a modest couch and a reasonably sized television. The kitchen contains exactly the tools required for regular cooking, and the closet holds clothes that are actually worn in rotation. The spare bedroom is utilized as an actual bedroom. This individual checks their bank account with a sense of calm confidence. I'm Pam, and this person has successfully accumulated 20 months of living expenses and savings and consistently invests 22% of every paycheck, all while living in that same neighborhood. The person earning significantly less possesses nearly 10 times the financial security. This isn't a narrative about income levels. It's a story about the often hidden relationship between material possessions and money that most people never grasp. The first individual isn't inherently bad with finances in an obvious manner. They don't gamble recklessly, nor do they support expensive addictions. They simply allowed a lifestyle to gradually accumulate that now demands every single dollar they earn just to maintain it. The second person, however, discovered a fundamental truth that changed everything. They learned that owning less doesn't equate to living worse. It means living deliberately. And deliberate living generates a financial margin that most high-income earners never get to experience. Today, I'm going to walk you through the Minimalist Money Rules that distinguish the people who always have money from those who never do, regardless of their salary. These rules aren't about deprivation or suffering. They are about understanding that almost every object you own carries ongoing costs you have likely never calculated. Let me begin with a concept that will permanently reframe how you consider every single purchase for the rest of your life. Everything you own carries a financial cost twice. The initial cost is obvious. It's the purchase price, the number printed on the receipt. But there is a secondary cost that most people completely overlook, and it is frequently larger than the first. This second cost includes storage fees, maintenance, mental energy expenditure, and significant opportunity cost. That large treadmill you bought requires physical space within your home. Residential space costs money, running roughly $35 to $55 per square foot annually in most urban areas. Since a treadmill occupies about 25 square feet, once you account for necessary clearance space, that's between $875 and $1,375 per year. In implicit rent, you are paying just to store exercise equipment that probably functions as a clothes hanger most days. The second cost also includes ongoing maintenance and upkeep. That boat sitting in your driveway requires winterization, cleaning, registration fees, insurance premiums, and occasional repairs. Industry standards suggest annual maintenance costs run about 12% of the boat's total value. Therefore, a $32,000 boat costs roughly $3,840 per year just to possess, even if you never actually take it out on the water. And I am not finished yet. The second cost also draws heavily on your mental energy. Every item you possess occupies a small slice of your attention span. It needs to be cleaned, organized, maintained, insured, worried about, and eventually disposed of properly. Researchers have discovered that visual clutter actively increases cortisol levels and reduces the brain's capacity to focus. Your stuff is literally stressing you out in ways you cannot consciously perceive. And no, it's still not over. The second cost includes significant opportunity cost. Every single dollar locked up in physical possessions is a dollar that is not being invested. That $16,000 home gym setup could have been $16,000 sitting in index funds, potentially growing to $55,000 or more over a 15-year period. You didn't just buy a home gym, you bought a home gym instead of securing future financial freedom. When you tally up these hidden costs, many possessions end up costing far more to simply own than they initially cost to buy. The purchase price is merely the entry fee. The ongoing costs continue to accrue for as long as you possess the item. Minimalists understand this dynamic intuitively. They aren't avoiding possessions because they dislike nice things. They avoid excessive possessions because they have calculated the true cost and decided most things simply aren't worth the burden. This leads directly to the first rule that minimalists follow religiously. Rule 1, calculate the cost per use before making any purchase. Before buying anything, estimate realistically how many times you will actually use it. Then, divide the total cost by that estimated number. This calculation provides the cost per use, which is the only honest measure of an item's value. A $220 jacket worn only twice costs $110 per wear. Conversely, a $450 jacket worn 225 times costs just $2 per wear. In any meaningful sense, the expensive jacket is actually cheaper. This calculation destroys most impulse purchase desires immediately. That $320 kitchen gadget you might use twice a year costs $160 per use during that first year. That is an obscenely expensive way to accomplish whatever task it performs. Meanwhile, a quality $35 tool you use weekly costs less than 70 cents per use over the first year. Cost per use also reveals which expensive purchases are genuinely worthwhile investments. A $2,200 mattress used every night for 10 years costs about 60 cents per use. That represents extraordinary value for something affecting your health and energy every single day. A $1,600 espresso machine used daily for 5 years costs roughly 87 cents per use, likely saving considerable money compared to daily coffee shop visits. The math cuts through marketing hype, emotional triggers, and social pressure. It reveals what actually makes financial sense versus what just feels appealing in the moment. Rule 2, apply the replacement test to everything you currently own. Walk through your home and look critically at each item you possess. Ask yourself one simple question. If this item disappeared today, would I actually spend money to replace it? Be honest with yourself. Would you really go out and buy another fondue set? Would you replace that bread maker collecting dust in the cabinet? Would you repurchase those clothes you haven't worn in 24 months? For the vast majority of items, the honest answer is no. You would not replace them. They exist in your life primarily through inertia, not intention. They were impulse purchases, gifts you felt obligated to keep, or remnants of past hobbies and phases you have long since moved beyond. These items have negative value. They cost you space, mental energy, and maintenance without providing corresponding benefits. Every hour spent organizing, cleaning around, or just thinking about items you wouldn't replace is an hour stolen from activities that actually matter to you. Minimalists ruthlessly eliminate items that fail the replacement test. They sell what has market value, donate what someone else could use, and discard what serves nobody. The process feels uncomfortable initially, but becomes incredibly liberating once complete. The psychological weight of owning things you don't want or need is substantial. Removing that weight creates mental space that is difficult to describe, but immediately noticeable. Rooms feel larger, decisions feel simpler. Cleaning takes half the time it used to. You know where everything is because everything remaining possesses a distinct purpose. Rule 3, never upgrade anything out of boredom. There is a pattern I see constantly among people who earn good incomes yet have nothing to show for it. They upgrade perfectly functional items simply because they have grown bored with them or because newer versions exist. Their television works perfectly, but the new model offers slightly better contrast. Their phone operates flawlessly, but the new release features a marginally improved camera. Their car runs reliably, but the New Year's model has updated styling. Their furniture serves its purpose, but they've grown tired of looking at it. These upgrades feel like improvements to lifestyle. In reality, they are wealth destruction disguised as progress. Minimalists maintain a strict policy. Never replace something that functions properly. The phone that makes calls, sends messages, and runs apps successfully does not need replacement just because a newer phone exists. The car that reliably transports you does not need replacement just because the neighbor bought something shinier. This policy saves enormous sums of money over a lifetime. The average American replaces their phone every 2 years, often while the previous device works perfectly fine. Over a 30-year period, this pattern costs between $35,000 and $55,000 in completely unnecessary purchases. Applied across all categories where upgrade culture operates, the lifetime waste easily exceeds $225,000. Minimalists escape this trap by clearly defining what functional means. An item remains functional until it genuinely fails to serve its intended purpose. Boredom is not failure. A desire for novelty is not failure. The mere existence of newer alternatives is not failure. Actual mechanical breakdown or genuine inability to perform required tasks constitutes failure. Everything else is just marketing convincing you to solve problems you don't actually have. Rule 4. Create friction for spending and ease for saving. Human behavior naturally follows the path of least resistance. If spending is easy and saving is difficult, you will spend. If saving is easy and spending is difficult, you will save. Minimalists engineer their environment to make the right choice the easy choice. Spending friction looks like removing stored credit card numbers from online retailers, requiring a mandatory 24-hour waiting period before any non-essential purchase, deleting shopping apps from your phone, unsubscribing from promotional emails, and avoiding stores entirely unless you have a specific intended purchase. Saving ease looks like automatic transfers to investment accounts happening on payday, keeping only small amounts in easily accessible checking accounts, making investment contributions happen before you even see the money, and treating savings like a fixed expense rather than an afterthought. These structural changes matter far more than willpower. Willpower depletes throughout the day, whereas environment remains constant. Someone relying solely on willpower to avoid impulse purchases will eventually fail when they are tired, stressed, or emotional. Someone who deleted the shopping apps and removed their credit cards simply cannot make an impulse purchase in that moment. Minimalists don't trust themselves to consistently make good decisions. They design systems that make good decisions automatic. The 24-hour waiting rule alone eliminates roughly 75% of impulse purchases. Most desires for mere objects fade within a day, if not acted upon immediately. Rule 5. Count your possessions regularly. This sounds obsessive until you actually do it. Counting forces awareness, and awareness prevents accumulation. Pick a category and count exactly how many items you own within it. Write that number down. The numbers often shock people who have never objectively examined their consumption patterns. How many shirts do you actually own? Most people guess low and discover they have 3 or 4 times what they estimated. How many kitchen gadgets? How many pairs of shoes? How many items are in your junk drawer? How many books do you own that you will never read again? The act of counting itself changes behavior. Once you know you own 53 shirts, buying another one feels different. You aren't just adding a shirt, you are bringing your collection to 54. The absurdity becomes visible. Minimalists track key categories over time. They set maximum thresholds, perhaps 35 items of clothing total, perhaps 20 books at any given time, perhaps a one-in, one-out policy where any new purchase requires removing something existing. These constraints prevent lifestyle creep. Without intentional limits, possessions naturally expand to fill available space. With limits, each addition requires a conscious decision about what it is replacing. That friction alone dramatically reduces acquisition. Rule 6. Rent or borrow before you buy. Most items people purchase get used intensively for a very short period and then rarely afterward. The excitement of newness fades rapidly. The initial enthusiasm decreases. The item joins the collection of things owned but seldom touched. Minimalists test this pattern by renting or borrowing before committing to ownership. Want to get into camping? Rent equipment for the first few trips. Want to try woodworking? Borrow tools from a friend or use a makerspace. Want a kayak? Rent several times before purchasing one. This approach accomplishes 2 significant things. First, it reveals whether the enthusiasm is genuine or merely temporary. Many interests fade quickly after the initial exploration phase. It is far better to discover this while renting than after purchasing expensive equipment that collects dust indefinitely. Second, it clarifies exactly what you need. First-time campers often buy too much gear or buy the wrong things. Renting lets you learn the requirements before committing. When you eventually purchase, you buy precisely what is necessary rather than guessing. The buy-first mentality costs people enormously over their lifetimes. Closets and garages across America contain dusty remnants of abandoned hobbies. Ski equipment from the phase when they thought they'd ski regularly. Photography gear from when they imagined becoming serious photographers. Music equipment from bands that played exactly 2 shows. Minimalists avoid becoming museums of past enthusiasm. They test interests thoroughly before investing. They maintain the flexibility to explore without the heavy burden of ownership. Rule 7. Understand the lifestyle multiplier effect. Every possession you own connects to other possessions. A boat requires a trailer, a hitch-equipped vehicle to tow it, storage fees, maintenance supplies, safety equipment, and appropriate clothing. A purchase that seems singular actually triggers a cascade of supporting purchases. This is the lifestyle multiplier. Major purchases multiply into entire ecosystems of related expenses. The true cost is never just the item itself. Watch how this plays out with common purchases. A home gym requires specific flooring, mirrors, storage solutions, ventilation considerations, and often renovations to make the space suitable. A pool requires chemical supplies, cleaning equipment, covers, patio furniture, maintenance tools, and often landscaping to complement the installation. A motorcycle requires gear, storage, maintenance equipment, and often a truck or trailer for transportation to riding locations. Minimalists calculate the full ecosystem cost before any major purchase. They know that a $6,000 purchase might actually represent $9,000 or $13,000 when all the multiplier expenses are included. This full accounting often transforms what seemed like a reasonable purchase into something clearly excessive. The multiplier effect also works powerfully in reverse. Eliminating one major possession often eliminates an entire category of related expenses. Selling the boat means no more storage fees, insurance, registration, maintenance, or towing costs. The savings extend far beyond the item's value. Rule 8. Define enough before you start earning. Here's something that traps high earners constantly. They never define what enough looks like, so they keep purchasing more without ever arriving at satisfaction. Their income increases, so they upgrade their lifestyle. The new lifestyle becomes normal, so they need another income increase to feel progress. This cycle continues indefinitely. People earning $320,000 feel just as financially stressed as people earning $85,000 because their expectations and expenses expanded right alongside their income. Minimalists break this cycle by defining enough before they start earning. They decide in advance what kind of home is sufficient, what kind of car meets their needs, and what level of material comfort constitutes genuine satisfaction. Then, they earn toward that target rather than constantly moving the goalpost. This might mean deciding that a $375,000 home is enough, even if you eventually could afford a $650,000 one. It might mean deciding that a $32,000 car is enough, even when colleagues drive $75,000 vehicles. It might mean deciding that your current wardrobe is enough, even as your income could support constant upgrades. Defining enough creates a finish line. Without it, you're running an endless race where lifestyle expansion always outpaces income growth. With it, you reach a point where additional income flows entirely to saving and investing, rather than consumption. The person who defined enough at $65,000 of annual spending and then started earning $160,000 builds wealth at an extraordinary rate. The $95,000 difference between income and enough goes directly to financial freedom. Meanwhile, someone earning the same $160,000 but constantly redefining enough upward might save almost nothing. Rule 9. Measure wealth by optionality, not accumulation. The conventional view measures wealth by what you have. houses, cars, possessions, and visible markers of success. Minimalists measure wealth differently. They measure it by what choices they can make. Can you leave a job that's destroying your mental health? Can you take 6 months off to handle a family emergency? Can you move to a new city for a relationship? Can you start a business without guaranteed income? Can you retire before age 65? Can you say no to opportunities that pay well but compromise your values? These options represent true wealth. They are only available to people who have built substantial margin between their income and their expenses. The person earning $210,000 but spending $205,000 has almost no optionality. They are chained to their income requirement. The person earning $85,000 but spending $48,000 has extraordinary optionality. They can absorb disruptions, take risks, and make choices based on preference rather than financial necessity. Minimalists understand that optionality requires liquid resources more than physical possessions. The money tied up in a car you don't need is money that can't buy your freedom when you need it. The home equity locked in excess house is equity that can't fund a career transition or extended sabbatical. This perspective transforms spending decisions. Each purchase isn't just exchanging money for an object. It is trading optionality for possession. Is this item worth reducing your ability to make free choices about your life? Sometimes yes, but often no. Rule 10. Practice cyclical decluttering rather than annual purging. Most people who attempt minimalism do a massive purge, feel great for a few weeks, and then gradually accumulate back to their starting point. The purge feels productive. The gradual reaccumulation goes unnoticed. Within 2 years, they are right back where they started. Minimalists avoid this pattern through cyclical decluttering. Rather than annual massive purges, they perform small, regular reviews, weekly glances at incoming items, monthly evaluation of one category, and quarterly assessment of overall accumulation trends. This cyclical approach catches accumulation early before it rebuilds to overwhelming levels. Removing 4 items per week is manageable and sustainable. Removing 400 items once per year feels overwhelming and gets postponed indefinitely. The cyclical approach also maintains awareness. When you evaluate your possessions regularly, you notice patterns. You see which categories tend to grow. You identify which emotional states trigger acquisition. You recognize which marketing tactics work on you specifically. This awareness enables prevention rather than just treatment. Let me give you a practical implementation of these rules that you can start today. This week, walk through your home with the replacement test in mind. Identify 12 items you would not replace if they disappeared. Sell, donate, or discard those items. Notice exactly how it feels to remove things you don't actually want. This month, implement the 24-hour rule for all non-essential purchases. Track how many purchase desires survive the waiting period versus how many evaporate. The data will reveal how much of your spending is impulsive rather than intentional. This quarter, count your possessions in 3 categories that tend to accumulate. For most people, clothing, kitchen items, and media or entertainment are useful starting points. Set a maximum threshold for each category based on what you actually use. This year, define what enough looks like across major spending categories. What home is sufficient? What transportation is adequate? What wardrobe meets your genuine needs? Write these definitions down. Refer to them when temptation arises to exceed your own standards. The financial transformation from these practices compounds significantly over time. Someone who applies these rules consistently for 7 years accumulates substantially less while saving substantially more. The gap between their lifestyle and their income creates wealth that cannot be built any other way. Here is what nobody tells you about minimalism and money. The relationship is bi-directional. Owning less creates more money, but having more money also makes owning less feel natural. When your savings account is robust and your investments are growing, the urge to accumulate diminishes. The psychological need that drives most consumption, the need for security and status, gets satisfied by financial strength rather than physical possessions. You don't need the stuff to feel successful because your bank account already tells you the story you want to hear. People trapped in consumption cycles often can't explain why they buy so much. The truth is usually that spending temporarily fills an emotional void that financial insecurity creates. Address the insecurity through actual financial strength, and the compulsion to spend often dissolves on its own. This creates a virtuous cycle. Spending less leads to saving more. Saving more creates security. Security reduces the emotional drive to spend. Reduced spending accelerates saving further. Each turn of the cycle reinforces the next. The opposite cycle is equally powerful but destructive. Spending everything creates insecurity. Insecurity drives more spending as temporary emotional relief. More spending deepens insecurity. The cycle continues until some external shock forces a breaking point. The choice between these cycles determines financial trajectory more than income ever could. High earners trapped in the destructive cycle build nothing. Modest earners riding the virtuous cycle build everything. The minimalist rules I have outlined aren't about suffering or deprivation. They are about recognizing that most consumption doesn't actually improve life satisfaction. Research consistently shows that beyond a baseline of security and comfort, additional purchases contribute minimally to well-being. Yet most people spend as if happiness scales linearly with spending. Minimalists align their behavior with this research. They spend enough to be comfortable and then redirect the excess toward freedom rather than accumulation. They end up with less stuff and more life. That apartment I described at the beginning, the one belonging to someone earning $54,000 with 20 months of savings, belongs to someone applying these rules consistently. They didn't get there through exceptional income. They got there through exceptional clarity about what actually matters. The other apartment, the one belonging to someone earning $98,000 who is 2 paychecks from crisis, belongs to someone who never questioned the assumption that more stuff equals better life. Both lifestyles are available to you regardless of what you currently earn. The choice is simply whether you want to own your possessions or whether you're comfortable with your possessions owning you. The math strongly favors the first option. So does the peace of mind.